name is Ashish J. Thakker. I was a refugee. I'm a school dropout, an entrepreneur, a philanthropist, a to-be astronaut, and now an author. I'll give you a quick background on my family's journey. My father's family left India in 1890 looking for trading opportunities and ended up in Uganda. And it's just phenomenal when you think about just sailing out, looking for trading opportunities, ending up and then going inwards and ending up in a small village in Uganda. Similarly, my mother's family left India and ended up in Tanzania in 1920. So I'm a fourth generation African. My grandparents and parents were born in East Africa. And in 1972, the unfortunate incident of Idi Amin took place. So my parents were kicked out of Uganda, and we moved to England, where my other sister and I were born. My first sister was born in Uganda. We were born in England, raised in England partly, but my parents were really missing home. They were really missing Africa. So in 1993, we sold our home and business in England, and we moved to Rwanda. 9 months later, unfortunately, the genocide broke out. So my parents, my sister, and I were refugees during that genocide in 1994. We were at home for 9 days, and then we were taken to a hotel called Hotel de Mille, which is famously known as Hotel Rwanda. How many of you have seen the movie Hotel Rwanda? So we were there for a period of about a few more days, and then taken to École Française, which is the French school. From there, taken to the airport, taken to Bujumbura in Burundi, which was having a similar situation. Luckily came out alive, but unfortunately everything we built as a family from 1972 to 1993 we lost in 94. So we moved back to Uganda as a full circle back home. I was at an age where I could understand what's happening. I could see what's happening. I could see people who were close to my parents avoid my parents, scared that if they come too close, my parents may ask for a favor. And as a result, I felt like I needed to do something about it. So in 1996, when I was 15, I quit school. So I'm officially the worst advocate for education. I quit school and I took a $5,000 loan and set up a little IT business in Uganda. Buying goods in Dubai, filling my suitcase with motherboards, hard drives, processors, coming back to Uganda, selling that, doing that every weekend. Did that for 4 months, so ended up going to my suppliers in Dubai around 15, 16 times, and then went to them and said, look, you know me now, I love you, you love me, can I please get some credit? And they said, you're from Africa, right? I said, yes, I'm from Africa. And they're like, no, you're not getting credit. And this was in 1996 when, as a continent, we were even more misunderstood than we are today. So I was frustrated, and I was advised that the only way I can really get credit is by setting up a business in Dubai, which I did. Realized so many people from across the continent are having the exact same challenge of not being able to get credit, etc. But as a Dubai company, I started getting credit, started traveling the continent extensively in 96, 97, and started supplying IT equipment on credit. But what that did for me very quickly was that it gave me an understanding that every single one of our countries is so different. It's so unique. We all have our own histories and cultures and politics and parliaments. How do you truly operate in a local manner, but with global standards? And that became the Mara model. So to fast track to today, we've turned 20 years old as an organization. The Mara Group has four core businesses. We have Atlas Mara, which is our banking group, which my partner Bob Diamond and I started, which is less than 3 years old. It's a bank which is in 7 countries across Africa with about $3.5 billion balance sheet, and really trying to be a positive disruptive force in financial services. We have a real estate business across the continent, which has exposure in about 8 African countries. We've got a partnership with GE in infrastructure, and then we have a technology business, which is focused on social media, e-commerce, and last mile logistics. 7 years ago, we set up the Mara Foundation. And the whole purpose of setting up the Mara Foundation was being a 15-year-old entrepreneur with no ability to raise capital, no ability to network, we understood what it's like firsthand being in that position. So the Mara Foundation was set up with a focus and a strategy of how do we enable, empower, and inspire young entrepreneurs and women entrepreneurs across the continent. So we focus on everyone but all men, which is a good decision. And the whole thing is truly enabling, empowering, and inspiring. And that's from informal education in the form of mentorship. So we have an app which is on the App Store called Mara Mentor, which is a mentorship platform. We have the whole access to capital. So how do we encourage more banks to lend to businesses, but at the same time equity? And thirdly, we're launching on November 12th. We're launching our Global Entrepreneurship Index, which is ranking countries around the world according to how entrepreneurially friendly they are towards SMEs, young entrepreneurs, and women entrepreneurs. We're intentionally going to launch it after I leave the Netherlands, so in case you're not happy with the ranking, you can't take it out of me. But it's a phenomenal tool which will hopefully enable tweaking public policy in the right direction. I also serve as the chairman of the United Nations Foundation's Global Entrepreneurs Council. And the whole focus in that is how do we find entrepreneurial solutions to global problems. The refugee crisis is one that we are very focused on. We did a trip in my council to Jordan and Sweden to really go deeper into it. And obviously the Sustainable Development Goals is a phenomenal initiative which got passed last year, which we're really focusing on as well. And the interconnectedness of the SDGs is something phenomenal as well. As I said, the Mara Group turned 20 years old, and as cheesy as it sounds, I think we're just getting started. And I think a lot of that credit goes to the fact of that Africa is what it is. We have a huge issue on the continent of the perception versus the reality. We are really misunderstood. And even when we are understood quite well as a country or maximum a region, we're generalized as an entire continent, which becomes even more frustrating. As Mara, our philosophy is, how do you be entrepreneurial but remain and have a very institutional framework? How do you be very global but extremely local at the same time? And the third and most important one is, how do you do good and do well? Too many organizations, in my opinion, promise to do good after doing well, but never get around to it. And therefore, having that thesis of actually genuinely doing good, you are absolutely going to do well. If you're going to give back, mean it, do it with the right intent, do it with the right intentions. I'm very lucky that I have a spiritual leader whose name is Morari Baku, whose teaching is truth, love, and compassion. 3 very simple but powerful words. And as a result, when you kind of think about it, when I meet a lot of our young entrepreneurs and they're fascinated by, sometimes they think that the understanding and the definition of success, in my opinion, gets a little blurred. Success should not be defined by wealth. It should be defined by the number of lives you're changing. And that's the kind of thing we need to start getting out there a bit more. We have to write and tell our own stories, and as a result, I wrote my book, which was The Lion Awakes, which is really trying to change the perception versus reality of Africa. I mean, we're a continent with, 52 cities with over 1 million people in them. 6 to 7 of the 10 fastest growing economies in the world. Despite the challenges, despite the commodity cycle, despite China's slowdown, there is genuine growth on our continent. You would generalize the numbers, and when IMF revises our growth rates, they're generalized as an entire continent. Yet countries like Rwanda are still growing at 6-7%, Cote d'Ivoire 9-10%. I mean, there is genuine phenomenal growth taking place on the continent. When you think about mobile phone penetration, it's just absolutely phenomenal of how mobile phone penetration is taking place. Mobile money, we were having a conversation about that. Having money on your phone for a grandmother in Kenya is absolutely normal. But anywhere else in the world, that's not. When you think about e-commerce, $1.5 billion spent in online shopping last year. It's going to be $75 billion in 8 years. 50x growth. Lagos has 20 million people, 20 million, yet has 3 shopping malls. The only way retail is going to work there is e-commerce. It's not going to be a luxury, it's going to be a necessity. But those are the kind of opportunities we have on our continent in terms of the ability to truly lead from. But we are misunderstood. Ebola, which is a very serious issue, extremely serious. And our continent did take it seriously. One of our countries was able to fight it on its own. However, during that period when Ebola was at its peak, especially on a global level, people cancelled their Christmas holidays to Kenya and South Africa. They didn't want to go to Mombasa and they didn't want to go to Cape Town because of Ebola. And people ended up going to London instead. What they forgot was that the epicenter of Ebola was closer to London physically than Kenya or South Africa. This is the issue that we face. Nigerian elections, we had peaceful, free, and fair democratic elections in Nigeria, but they weren't talked about. And do you know why they were not talked about? Because they were peaceful, free, and fair. And then the most difficult one for me, which I'm still grappling with, and I'm sure a lot of you have views on this, but I still don't understand, is that Kenya sent troops to fight global terrorism. They sent troops to Somalia to fight global terrorism. And as a reaction to that, one of the shopping malls in Kenya was attacked. And that shopping mall was attacked, and every country, every Western country particularly, put a travel ban, a travel alert, saying don't go there, it's dangerous. France had a similar issue, a similar time period. And the whole world flew there, the leaders flew there, walked the streets, and stood in solidarity. I don't get it. Are our lives valued according to the GDPs of our countries? I still don't get it. And this is where we are misunderstood. It is so important that we start shifting the narrative. I am somebody from the private sector. I had a fantastic conversation with Hans, who has lived in quite a few countries across the continent, and I was explaining that as somebody in the private sector who interacts with our governments, I've seen the transformation of mindsets and styles and everything else across our continent for the last 20 years, across 25 countries. Our governments are extremely receptive to suggestions, to ideas. It's not their way or the highway. It's not that at all. We're able to sit down and talk to regulators and explain and understand things and debate and brainstorm and have a very open conversation, which is so encouraging to see that they want to kind of go to that next step. We sometimes don't celebrate the fact enough that in Kenya, mobile money was created in Kenya. But it was created because private sector was very innovative and took the lead. But it was also enabled because the regulator allowed it to be tested and tried. It could have been misused in so many different ways, and I'm sure it was, from money laundering and all of that stuff, but they took a chance, they tweaked it, and now they've strengthened that system. But as a result, the level of financial inclusion that's taking place is phenomenal. And now it's financial institutions that need to take the lead and make it mobile banking from mobile money. Those are the kind of amazing things that are happening on the continent, which is so exciting. We need to change the narrative. We have to. People talk about bringing Silicon Valley to Africa. And I'm really excited about that. You know, when we create these Silicon Valley areas in our cities, I think it's more of a real estate strategy than it is a technology strategy, frankly. But I'm more excited about how do we take Africa to Silicon Valley? How do we create local innovation, create that enabling, nurturing environment, protect them with the right IP laws, and then take those solutions global? That's what's going to be game-changing for us. And that's what's already happening on the continent, but it needs to be nurtured in the right way. It's a time to obviously dream big and start small. It's a time to try things in a slightly different manner. Traditional development is very important in so many different areas, but dialogue and finding new models is equally important. And talking to the people who are the actual recipients and figuring out ways to do things in a way that can bridge those gaps is very, very crucial. Somebody asked me when I was in San Diego, and the journalist asked me and said, when is Africa going to catch up? And I said, we're not going to catch up. And he's like, yeah, I knew it. I knew you guys were going to catch up. And I was like, yeah, we're not playing to catch up. We're playing to lead the way. And I think the fact that we don't have legacy systems, the fact that we have this population growth, the fact that we've got such an energetic young demographic, and the fact that we have the public sector that's truly changing its mindset. As a continent, we take this for granted sometimes, but as a continent, we are so patriotic as a continent. And I'll give you a simple example. When Ghana was playing in the World Cup, I was in Zambia. And Ghana, a West African country, Zambia, a Southern African country, and in Zambia, there were Ghanaian flags everywhere. And let's be honest, if I came to the Netherlands and England was playing in the World Cup, I don't think I'd see one England flag out there. So we are very patriotic, but at the same time, we're pitching the Africa story, but then East Africa wants you to invest in East Africa, West Africa wants you to invest in West Africa, and as a result, our countries are competing with each other to become that investment destination. Within East Africa, Kenya wants to be the hub, Rwanda wants to be the hub, Uganda wants to be the hub. But what this has resulted in is a better investment climate, an easier place to do business, because we're all competing for the ultimate end result of the investment within our countries. But as a whole, we're singing the same story, which is really, really important. So thank you so much, and I really, really appreciate being here, and I look forward to seeing you all on our continent. Thank you.
I'm a king, go I think I'm a king.